and welcome to another edition of Brain Balance Live. I'm Jen. I am a fellow Brain Balance mom, and we come together each week, Heather and I, just to chat. And she gives us amazing tips to kind of just help us with our kiddos. And we're all kind of back to school in whatever way that we're back to school now. So, Heather's basically going to help us just with some tools. We always call it tools in our toolbox, right, Heather?
Yeah, I think that's a good way to describe it.
Yes. And listen, Heather is just a wealth of knowledge and really just cares so deeply about these kids and really all individuals. Why don't you tell everybody a little bit about the programs that we have going on for Brain Balance Centers?
Well, we have our traditional program that's been around for many years in center. We also have a hybrid option where you can have some sessions one-on-one at home as well as some in the center. We have a virtual only model, and we work all the way through adults. And today's topic, I think, is going to be very relatable to individuals of all ages, even though we're talking about some specific changes that happen when the hormones kick in, tween teen time, but a lot of this is going to apply to everyone.
Love that. Yes, we always find that I can usually apply most of this information to myself as well. And just so everyone knows, if you have not watched our show before, Heather is a cognitive behavioral specialist, a therapist, and also she knows loads about autism, ADHD, kind of the entire spectrum of our neurotypicals, our neurodiverse. She's got the brain pathways down. So that's where her knowledge comes in. And I think we should just get right into this topic, how we're going to help our ADHD teens and tweens kind of find their independence.
Yes, this is all about what do tweens and teens most need from the adults in their lives, parents and teachers. And they need relationship, they need unconditional love, and they need understanding. And so we're really focusing on some things that intellectually you might say, well, yeah, I know, but things to think about on a little deeper level. And just like we are all unique human beings, the experience of ADHD or ADHD-like symptoms, we're not just talking about those that have a diagnosis. Their experience with those struggles are going to be unique to them. And by the way, that also means they have unique strengths. I have never in my entire career worked with someone who has ADHD-like tendencies, dyslexia, whatever it is, who don't also have amazing, amazing strengths. And we are all a combination of our strengths, our struggles, our personalities. And so to just some examples here, a lot of times it's underdiagnosed in girls and in women, because it often manifests differently. And of course, even when I say that, there's going to be differences even within genders as well. It's not all about gender, but a lot of times there is a tendency, a very, very strong pattern of girls being less likely to be physically hyperactive, and they have emotional hyperarousal. They may be daydreaming out the window, and if they act impulsively, they act like a lady. And whereas with boys, a lot of times, well, boys will be boys. I don't know what that means. I kind of do. But that means that a lot of guys who are struggling are thought they're just being boys, and These struggles get overlooked. And again, one of the reasons they get overlooked is because they are so smart, because they have so many strengths. That does not mean that the struggles are any less real. It doesn't mean they're not trying when something is hard.
Absolutely.
And we talk all the time about not ascribing negative personality or character labels to things that are coming from neurodevelopmental gaps. And, often kids are, I read a survey recently that said that it is believed that by the time kids reach high school, they've received 20,000 negative messages, such as you're the problem child, you're lazy, you're defiant. And, I'm the problem child because I say and do things I don't mean. Emotional hyperarousal is real. When kids do this, they're impulsive. It's hard for them to hit the brake pedal and think through things before they speak and act. And if they later apologize, it doesn't mean they don't mean it, even if they do the same thing again the next day. It's because their morals, their character, their logical brain knows better. But in the moment, the emotional brain is taken over. It's just like when we're in a fight or flight response facing a tangible danger, they go into this fight or flight of perceived threat. I can't keep friends. I'm not likable. I'm not a good friend. If, there may be bullying, there may be a lot of these kids they love making friends. But as they get older, this is a big switch that can happen around this age we're talking about today, is that the social expectations go up and they may miss out on nonverbal cues. All the nuances of how you interact and things you could get away with when you're younger. And these kids had tons and tons of friends. They start seeing that they're not being invited over to do things aside from what the entire team is doing, what the entire class is doing. Do your kids have difficulty with friendships that are really meaningful and connected, or what they call friends? Is that just a classmate and really more of an acquaintance? Do they do things aside from things where they're sort of forced together in a group? That's important. And by the way, another thing that can turn friends off is if they have distractibility and are looking around. Well, you don't even care what I'm saying. And it can come off as lack of care or empathy. They may have difficulty taking on the point of view of someone else. Sensory processing disorder can coexist or can be misconstrued as ADHD. So many times at least half of individuals with ADHD, and it depends on which study you look at, have comorbid conditions. They have more than one thing going on. It may be anxiety, it may be depression. I don't complete tasks, so therefore I'm irresponsible. See these negative narratives that they either take upon themselves or they've heard so many times, and that becomes their personal narrative. I opt out. This is often what gets called as apathy, laziness, lack of motivation. We're going to talk a lot about motivation in a minute. But normally opting out is I'm anxious. The fight or flight response, the flight part of that is I need to escape because I'm overwhelmed. So kids may avoid social situations, activities that they would otherwise enjoy. It might be an assignment and then the homework battles that ensue. I get stuck and I don't know why. How would you feel about yourself if you're like, I know I need to get this done, and for some reason I don't get started or I don't see it through to completion? And so then you start beating yourself. What is wrong with me? Because you can't articulate what is holding you back. Fear of failure. A lot of times we have perfectionists. We did an entire show on that. But fear of failure. So I may feign apathy because if I try and fail, then I'm a failure because they think I am what I do. I am who people say I am, rather than recognizing there's room for mistakes. So these are there could be so many more examples, but keep in mind, are there other things going on in addition to this? Is it something else instead of this? We're all a combination of strengths and struggles, and we need to have empathy and put ourselves into their shoes and really look for patterns so that we're taking care of the whole person.
And this is like where when we do have these negative narratives, you're so right. That's kind of what starts to just overpower your entire mental. And you've helped me see, because as parents, I feel like we're so critical in nature just because we're trying to teach, we're trying and
yeah.
So when your kid messes up, you obviously are like, I need to point that out. But
we are going to talk so much about that too. You're exactly right.
Yeah, it's hard. I'm so glad that you've taught me about pointing out the positive more often.
Yeah. That's such a good point. We're going to do a pretty deep dive on that in a few minutes.
Love it.
Another thing they want you to understand, I don't choose when to be motivated. One of the most common things I hear, and I understand that it looks like when kids want to do something, they attend, they will do a great job, they will stick with it. And if they're not interested, they just won't do it. And there is truth to that, but the interest changes the chemistry of the brain. That is not under our voluntary control. That does not mean they're being stubborn. It does not mean they're trying to control the situation, that they're being disrespectful. Kids and adults with ADHD do not choose when to be motivated. This is true on a certain level of all of us, but it is even more true with some of these neurodevelopmental struggles we're talking about today. Look on the left, the ADHD brain is trying to push this boulder of a task up a hill when it is based on extrinsic motivation. This is not something that I'm driven to do internally. I'm doing it to avoid punishment, to get a reward, because I know I can't fail this. I need to get a good grade. Praise, even at work, if you're doing it for a bonus, that is still extrinsic, unless it's tied to something. You can internalize that a bit by saying, with this bonus, I can do this for my family. And now it's values driven. But extrinsic motivation, those tasks will always be more laborious. That happens a lot when a task is over 70% done. It's old, it's hanging over your head. It's already beat you down because you're on this loop of, why am I not getting this done? It's long-term because you don't get those short bursts of reward chemicals released. It's boring, tedious, but a lot of times kids love sports, or they love competition. Of course, the competition can go too far, especially if they're lacking social emotional skills. But competition and pressure often will release dopamine in the brain, and that gets more motivation going. But true intrinsic motivation is built upon, I have autonomy, competence. It has a purpose. It is very novel, interesting. I'm curious about it. Connectedness, if it gives me a sense of connection with other people, even kids who roll their eyes at everyone and are act annoyed with other people, maybe blame others, does not mean we are built to be social creatures. Even introverts, it may just look different. So those are the types of things that stir the soul. A lot of times, individuals with ADHD have a hard time knowing what stirs their soul because they do not have a strong sense of self, which we'll talk about next. But what do teens want? What do tweens and teens want? They want to do what adults do. Ironically, as their very developmentally normal need for independence increases, that goes faster than their toolkit to handle it, their executive functions. So they want to make their own decisions. They want to have their opinions valued. They must be heard. They want to decide what rules apply and how. That can be problematic, but there's a way to do it collaboratively. So you want to approach your kids and say, I want to help you accomplish something that matters to you, and set SMART goals: specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time bound. I did an entire show on that. Anyone who wants that, it is much more than you're going to get on a quick Google search of SMART goals. There are many more factors to think about here. And then instead of holding them to task, say, how are you going to accomplish this? When your extracurriculars kick in, how are you going to juggle your time? Have you thought about this? How you want to agree upon how your check-ins are going to go, and you want to be there as a bowling alley bumper. You want to be there a little bit, but let them fall short. Let them face natural consequences, but you're there to support without steering the ship. They've got to start learning to steer the ship. And when you reach this goal, you're showing me that you're growing in independence and responsibility. And that means that you are earning more privileges. So this is I did an entire show on this, but I wanted to touch on this. It's so important to remember. I cannot say it enough. Kids and adults with ADHD or ADHD-like symptoms do not choose when to be motivated. It is not because they want to do this and not this. It absolutely changes how the chemicals communicate in the brain and how these reward chemicals are released. Okay, let's move on.
I love it. While we're moving slides, just so you guys know, if you ever have questions, please write them in the comments. And as Heather said too, some of our old shows cover some of this information. So if something piques your interest, reach out to Heather, put it in the comments, and we're here to help you. What do we have here?
So everyone watching this, think about, what do you see in that picture? Normally when we see a picture, we kind of fill in a story around it. Mm-hmm. Okay. So think about how what came to mind when you looked at this picture is probably different now than it would have been February of 2020 or before. Why is that? Because we have had a world event going on that has added to our background knowledge about mask wearing. So most people watching it right now may have thought, COVID, mask, somebody's sick of wearing, and if you're anti-mask, you might, I don't blame them. They're sick of wearing the mask. They threw it out the window. Someone who's an environmentalist might think somebody littered. That's unacceptable. Yep. If you work in a hospital, you may be thinking, oh, heart attack. Yeah. And it reminds you of a patient you worked with yesterday. The point of this is that background knowledge, our experience of the world, our perception of how our lives have gone, shapes how we interpret everything else. That is important as we move into the next slide, because kids have been and adults have faced so much criticism. You're the problem child. You're lazy. You're apathetic. You don't set goals. You don't have anything that stirs you. You're, all of those things. You're a bad friend. You're stupid. Anything that they've heard, that shapes how they perceive, how everyone else treats them, leads to rejection sensitivity, real or perceived rejection. can shut them down, can lead to aggression, and I'm going to take up for myself, and they do it to the nth degree in a way that's not appropriate. I have self-doubt. I'm sensitive to rejection. We've talked before about how if individuals struggle with anxiety, especially if their body awareness is low, they will misperceive rejection in their communication partner if what their communication partner is conveying to them is anything other than overt happiness and approval. Monotone, bored, tired, distracted could be they don't like me, or they're out to get me. That teacher is just going to doom me to failure, whatever. All right, so how do we overcome this? There's so many things we could say, but when you read this first one, unconditional love. Yes, Heather, thank you. Thank you for telling me to love my child unconditionally. It's not about me telling you to love your child unconditionally. It is about encouraging you to overtly convey it in your words and your actions. We know you love your child unconditionally. Do they? Put yourself into their shoes. Understand that abstract concepts are usually harder for individuals with ADHD or ADHD-like symptoms to read. And so sometimes we have to overtly state things. Just like in another example unrelated to unconditional love is if somebody keeps blurting out in class and the teacher says, raise your hand before you talk. And they're like, da, da, da. Because it wasn't overtly stated to raise your hand and then wait to be called upon. Right. They think they just did what you said.
Yep.
Same thing with unconditional love. Very intentionally and specifically. There is nothing you could ever do that is going to change my love for you. We want to say things like that and back it up with our actions, most importantly. Growth mindset. I won't spend a lot of time on this, but so many kids who've had all of these negative messages. I can't do it. I'm stupid. I'm a failure. I'm never going to amount to anything. That is a fixed mindset. Just because you're struggling with this right now, it means you're not there yet. When you do hard things, your brain grows. I know you can do this. You want to praise process instead of the outcome. When we pray, you can tie it to the outcome. The reason you got this grade is because you persevered. Even when it got hard, you reached out to your study buddy. You did some more research online. You asked me for help. You went to the teacher. You used new strategies. How did you think to use those? You are praising the process, showing interest. What made you decide to write on that topic? That's really interesting. Because unintentionally, when we praise the MVP status, when we praise the grade, that is why I got approval. I'm a human doing, not a human being. I have to perform or else I'm not a good enough. Leads to a lot of shame. There's room for mistakes. I've talked before about there are so many cool books about inventions that were created as a result of mistakes. Ice cream cone, Post-it notes, things we use all the time. And when we make mistakes, we have to always remember to model and not be saying things, oh, I'm so stupid. No. Oops, wow, I learned from this. Next time I'm going to use the blender and not this, whatever. Flour went everywhere. Laugh it off. Talk about it out loud intentionally. Your kids are always watching, including your teens, even when they act like they're not.
I love that. My daughter actually just said she came home and said her math teacher said, I'll let you retake your quizzes, your tests, everything. If you come in for a tutoring session with me, I don't care what your grade was. And I'll let you take it again and again if we keep practicing the material. And it was so refreshing.
That's awesome. Yeah. Help gain new and lacking skills. It is so important. You don't have to do it all. Get the professional help your kids need to support them in their executive dysfunction, their emotional dysregulation, their impulsivity, their anxiety, whatever their struggles are. And other skills can be things related to interests they have. Maybe their SMART goal is related to a hobby. Give them opportunities to explore other aspects of themselves besides academics. Always modeling a family that doesn't give up, grit, perseverance. However, I want to give a caveat to this. I've said this before, but there is a time to let things go. How valuable is it? Does it make the top 5 value list for your family? We can't be all things to all people. We can't expect our kids to give 100% to every single thing. So that's not quitting. That is being judicious in how you spend your time. Reassurance always. That doesn't mean if they're upset, we don't say, calm down. It's okay. No, we empathize and we reassure that we know they're going to get through it. We share things that we've been through and how we got there. What do you think you can do to get through this? Assertiveness. I talked last week about self-advocacy, talking about how to stick up for yourself in a way that's appropriate. Sometimes kids go from being a doormat to now I'm going to stand up for myself. And because they may be lacking social emotional skills, they may do it in a bit of a way that's too aggressive.
Sure.
So we talk about when to just bite your tongue, when to stand up. You can role play. You can give hypothetical scenarios. What would be the best way to handle this so that when it happens in their real lives next time, it's not the first time they feel that they're figuring out how to handle a situation like that.
Totally.
Always practicing these things at home. Good communication with the teachers. Share back and forth strategies that are working so that there can be some consistency in really solidifying these abilities. Self-compassion, I think this is one of the ones that's the hardest for parents to model because we're so busy taking care of our kids. But self-care, taking time for self, things that reinvigorate you, not just self-maintenance. That's more than eating right and sleep and exercise, although those are great places to start. Kind self-talk. Remember that if kids say, I'm so ugly. No, you're so beautiful. That's going to fall on deaf ears. They think that they're not going to buy into that. But if you can help them move into, we don't want to give them mantras that feel fake.
Right.
But what's something about their physical appearance that they do like? Or if they're talking about body image, what are things you like about your body? Body acceptance is not just about what it looks like. It's about how it performs for you. Talk through these things. Get them to step outside themselves. Anytime we're helping other people, it gives us less space to ruminate about things that aren't going as well in our lives. It gives a lot of perspective, leads to tons of gratitude. So much research on that. We want to give our teens less advice. We don't want to go into fix-it mode. Think about this. Do they need a confidant or an advisor right now? So many times when we're talking about this age, they need a confidant. That's a great time to show your unconditional love. They may say things that are hard to hear. Bite your tongue. Stay calm at all costs. You can go take it out on your pillow later. Ask for advice on things you're facing, things that are appropriate for them. There's nothing that says I value your voice and you have great ideas than asking for their advice on things. There's nothing that will grow self-confidence more than that. Listen more than you speak. Ask questions instead of giving answers. Model confidence. And I think that's hard too, because so many parents are beating themselves up. What am I doing wrong? We just think about the negative self-talk. So I know that goes along with the self-compassion. There's so many other things we could say, but just remember that kids are always watching, always listening. All right, let's move on. I knew that one was going to make you raise your hand.
Yeah, you knew.
Executive dysfunction makes it hard to get tasks done. In recent years, so many experts are saying ADHD is really a misnomer because you hear the word attention, you hear the word hyperactivity. Hyperactivity is more about hyperarousal, which is very, very real. But it's really more a disorder of executive function, planning, time management, working memory. I did our last 2 shows ago was about working memory. Self-regulation, that's impulse control, that's emotional regulation, that's the ability to tune out distractions and keep track of what I'm supposed to be doing. Sticking with it. This is one of the last ones that comes along when the going gets tough. But part of hope and part of intrinsic motivation is knowing we are going to face hurdles. Talk about those in advance before your kids face them, because then you're talking logical brain to logical brain. When this happens, what are some ways we can work around it? And because you already have a plan A, plan B, plan C, they don't get so distraught necessarily when they run into that roadblock. Organization, getting going. Sometimes the getting going is the hardest part. Sometimes it's that kids do not know the big picture relates to the details. Everything's the Roman numeral. Everything's the big deal. That's overwhelming. So I avoid it. Metacognition. This is a lot about that background knowledge. What is different about your child's background knowledge because of all the negative messaging they've gotten, because of the sensory processing challenges they have? I shared before that because I was legally blind for so many years and my equilibrium was shot, I would not know what people were talking about at these history museums we would go to on vacations. I didn't get nearly as much from that to pull on when I was then studying it in school. Whatever their background experience is, or their perception of it, is going to skew how well they can pull in their background experiences, because their background experience may not match what actually happened. But perception is reality. But understanding cause and effect, there's a lot of impulse control in that. You have to hit the brake pedal and think about, if I do this, this will happen. If I handle it this way, this will happen. Being able to think about my not turning in assignments, how that's going to impact my plan when I get out of high school. Problem solving. Cultivate independent problem solvers instead of jumping in and rescuing. Let them face natural consequences. Be their guide, not their taskmaster. I did an entire attention and distractibility show. There are many types of attention, and most of the time, individuals with ADHD or ADHD-like symptoms do not struggle with the ability to sustain focus, which is what we usually think about with attention. They may lack the cognitive flexibility to switch gears from this over to what I'm supposed to be doing. They may have difficulty sustaining attention on visual information specifically, or on auditory information specifically. There are many, many types of attention. And flexibility, I'm right, you're wrong, doesn't mean their character is stubborn. It means they're lacking some neural pathways to see shades and degrees of situations. Is it possible that what I think is right in this situation and not in this one? Could two people be right, even if they disagree? Is there a time when nobody's right and nobody's wrong? These are opinions. Do they have room for feelings and opinions? I've talked to a lot of teenage students and college-age students lately who talk to me about how they struggle with, they're supposed to write an opinion piece based on research. And they're like, which one do you want? Do you want it to be based on facts, or do you want to know what I think about it? You can't do both. We have had these conversations. And think about most conversations you have, there might be a fact that XYZ happened in the world. What's your take on it? What's my take on it? And that's what leads to a lot of fights, a lot of relationships falling apart. Comparing and contrast, which are the relevant details? What's irrelevant to this situation? I can't tell you how many times my boys, I would be trying to teach them about, you don't always get your way and respecting what someone else says. And they'd say, no, his shirt wasn't orange, it was yellow. Thank you. Not the point of what I was saying. That is really the difficulty in knowing what is relevant and irrelevant at a given time. Another thing to keep in mind is kids can be more detail-oriented, as seen by the fact that they want to correct details of what you said. You said this was going to happen at 6 o'clock. It's 6:07. You meant 6-ish. That's abstract. Nope, you said 6. Literal
you
concrete.
Said 6. You lied.
And yet, yes. And yet, they will be sloppy with details in other ways. Maybe they don't know what's relevant. Maybe they're missing visual details from a sensory processing standpoint. So log these things, look for patterns, and get the support they need. Executive function is what we need to be independent, functioning members of society. This is not just to get you through middle school and high school. This is life. This is parenting. This is jobs. Okay, let's move on. And to circle back around to how we started this all, relationship. Sometimes we need to take off our parent hat, our advisor hat, and be the confidant. Just invest in connectedness, one-on-one time, family meetings. That's why I put break from teaching. Not every conversation needs to be about teaching. Kids sometimes just need a break. Pick your battles. In the big scheme of things, is this thing that you're getting on them about, how much does it matter? How much is it going to equip them for life? And it's real easy to think, I asked them to do this and they didn't. That's disrespectful. It feels that way, and I get it. But could there be another reason why they're not doing it? Is this worth it? If we pick on every single thing, they see parents as nags, and then they don't listen to us when it matters most. When you see them going down a really bad path. Give them choices anytime you can. In these family meetings, set up family rules that apply to every member of the family, including parents, because they help set them up. There's more buy-in. Have them posted, and because they help come up with them and they see you following them also, there's going to be, let them vent if they're doing it respectfully. Stay in the present. One of the biggest problems, and I get it because it's frustrating, I've been in your shoes, is when there is a misfire in something they do, to dredge up everything they've done. Let's say they're in 7th grade and start talking about something that happened in 3rd grade, 4th grade, 5th grade, 6th grade. They feel like they are in such a deep hole they can't climb out, so why even try? You've dealt with that, clean slate, and let them feel that they have something to build on instead of digging out a hole all the time. It also shows it conveys a lack of forgiveness, even though you may be doing it as a teachable moment, trying to show patterns. That is not how they're most likely going to receive it. Reconsider preconceived notions of success. We have these things of what success should look like. What does success mean to them? College is not for everyone. Trade school. We don't want to live vicariously through our kids. If they don't like an extracurricular, what's a different one that might be more in keeping with their personalities and their interests?
Yeah.
We need to keep top of mind all the time. They have hormones raging, higher academic demands. Yes, hormones and puberty exacerbate these struggles, but sometimes hormones get too much of the blame. Simultaneously, as this is happening, the school demands are getting much, much harder. They have multiple classes to juggle. They're expected to write down their assignments independently in a planner. They may have a paper or a research project due in a month instead of just daily worksheets. More reading, just more and more and more and more. The vocabulary is getting harder. Complexity of language goes way up. Social expectations go up. The desire for independence and social issues, much higher expectations. Know that it is not character. It is not morals. The fact that there is a strong link between ADHD and higher substance abuse. They are about 6 times more likely to be in car wrecks, and most of the time they're the cause of them. There is a lot of promiscuity, and a lot of that has to do with seeking acceptance. We don't want to judge. We want to look at where this is coming from. Why is it happening? Address the foundational causes, but hone communication. Think about not just what you're saying, but how you're saying it. When it's going the best is when the kids are doing more of the talking. Help them engage in life authentically. Interest, find a lot of stuff speeding them up. It is so important to help them find things to be joyful about. And positive attention, which is what Jen was saying earlier. We know this intuitively, that we need to praise our kids. It needs to be genuine praise, not just like, oh, you're the best thing ever. No, I'm not. Of course, you have to say that. You're my mom. You're my dad. Let your kids hear you bragging on them in their earshot to your friend, to your sister, your brother. Be very specific. I love how you spoke up in your IEP meeting and then followed up with your teacher after that. Way to advocate for yourself. Very, very specific. That feels real. That is something they can buy into. Do you have anything that this is about it for me?
Oh my gosh. No, I love all of it, because I do feel like I get caught up in the teaching and also honestly in the chores and the monotonous stuff that really, there's always going to be dirty dishes. There's always going to be, clothes that need to be washed. But I'm looking at this, mom sitting on the couch with her child and thinking, being present and engaged with them is so important. So often when they are calm and chill and relaxed, I'm taking that opportunity to do dishes and get stuff done, where I'm looking at this going, maybe I need to just leave the dishes and sit on the couch.
Yeah. We know this intuitively, but just think when they are out the door and on their own, are you going to regret the fact that you had 3 plates in the sink? Or are you going to regret not taking that? And not speaking to you, I'm just talking about in general.
No, in general, it's great.
I think this is just a very natural. I did the same thing sometimes. It's like, oh, this is my chance. Nobody's fighting.
Yeah.
What can I get done?
Yeah.
But it's really about prioritizing what is most important. And when you look back, what would you wish you would have done more of? What do you wish you had put on the back burner? Because we cannot do it all. And we have to think about our values, and that's where our time goes.
Yep. I love it. I feel like this is my refresher each week to kind of like get myself back to center. I'm always so grateful for all of the tips that you give. And I just want everyone that's watching to know that Heather is such a great resource. She will answer your private messages. She will see your comments on here. As you can see, we've got all the phone numbers you can call to the Brain Balance Centers. And you will more than likely see her if you go in and grab your assessment. I know she visits each one of them. them very lovingly. And of course, follow her at The Hidden Churn. Do you have any other shows this week, Heather?
Yes. Dr. Brian and I will be back Thursday at 3:35.
Amazing. Well, we will see you guys next week. Heather, thank you so much.
Thank you, Jen. Thanks, everyone. Have a great week.